This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister's visit to Germany and its significance. The participants are Meera Shankar, former diplomat, and Manas Pratim Bhuyan, journalist.
Ambassador Shankar, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today began a three-nation visit to Europe, and he's in Germany in the first leg of his visit today. The Prime Minister's visit to Germany is seen as very important as Germany currently holds the presidency of the powerful G7, as well as its influence on 27-nation European Union is very, very significant. The Prime Minister's visit comes at a time when Europe is dealing with the crisis in Ukraine, and there has been mounting pressure on India by the Western powers to criticize Russia for its attack on Ukraine. Prime Minister Modi has already held a bilateral meeting with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and the meeting took place prior to their sixth round of intergovernmental consultations, which will also be attended by senior ministers from both the sides. How do you see Prime Minister Modi's visit to Germany in the backdrop of the geopolitical turmoil that we have been witnessing in the region, as well as resolved by both India and Germany to further expand cooperation in a range of areas, including trade, investment, clean energy, and defense?
Look, I think it's an important visit for two reasons. One, as you explained, the visit takes place at a time when the global order in Europe has been upended by what has happened in Ukraine. And there is a divergence of perspectives on the Ukraine issue between the European Union and India, which was quite apparent when the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, had come to India recently and with other ministers from other countries, European countries, who participated also in the Raisina dialogue. Now, I think we have been able to explain our perspective that there is a historical context and a geopolitical context to India's relationship with Russia, and that India believes it's important not to push Russia into a corner because we would like the war to end, the fighting to stop, and to have negotiations which would move the needle towards a peaceful resolution of the issues, taking into account the interests of both Russia and Ukraine. So this is one reason why this is important. The second is that there is a new government in Germany. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has just taken over after many years of the leadership by Chancellor Angela Merkel. He's also from a different party, the Social Democratic Party, though they were in a coalition with Angela Merkel's party in the last government, and Chancellor Scholz was himself the finance minister in that government. So to that extent, you are likely to see a continuity of policy between the policies of Angela Merkel and Chancellor Scholz. I think it's important for Prime Minister Modi to get to know the new leadership in Germany and to establish an equation because Germany is the most important country in Europe. It is the economic powerhouse and the engine of the European economy. And politically, it also provides the kind, along with France, the intellectual heft to the idea of Europe and the European Union. So for both reasons, I think Germany is an important country, which I hope this visit will put on the path of closer collaboration with India. There are areas where India and Germany would like to work together. Green technology is one, and Germany has been providing $1 billion a year to India for cooperation in this area, in green technologies. They also are leaders, world leaders in the areas of battery storage for power plants and for in the hydrogen economy as well. So there's a lot that the two countries can work on together. For Germany, I think accelerating the transition away from fossil fuels will also be a strategic objective because they want to reduce dependence on Russia. For India, accelerating the move towards a less fossil fuel dependent economy will be important economically and from the point of view of climate change because prices of fuel are going sky high and they're very volatile. Whereas if we are able to master the whole renewable energy cycle for production in India and the hydrogen cycle, I think it bodes very well for India's energy security and energy independence as well, reducing our dependence on the global volatility in the energy market. The India-EU Free Trade Agreement is another. We've been having discussions on this for many years, and it was stuck for a variety of reasons. Neither side could muster the political will to work their way through the issues which were blocking the conclusion of an agreement. I think Germany and Europe were consumed by handling the Brexit issue and its fallout. India was looking at assessing how the free trade agreements that it had signed had worked, had they been beneficial for us or not. So there wasn't a lot of energy from both sides in trying to conclude such a deal. But I think now there will be a new resolve to work our way past some of these because of what has happened in Ukraine, because of the mounting concerns about China and the interest that countries have in de-risking and diversifying critical supply chains. So I think Europe will look also more at India in this connection. Finally, I would say that even in the defense sector, there is a possibility of working together and also seeks to step up defense production in India with its own industry and also with the participation of foreign partners who are willing to invest in the defense sector in India. Finally, I think there's the whole IT sector, which may be of interest because both Europe and India have been looking at some of the aspects of sovereignty, of privacy of data, of how to ensure that the content of that the big internet companies take some responsibility for the kind of messaging which is put out, so that messaging which is clearly violative of laws is not given free play. In fact, Europe has just adopted a new law, which probably we should also study. So I think that there is a range of areas in which India and Germany will work together and where India and Europe can work together. And all this will figure in the discussions. From India's point of view, we will try to impress upon Germany and Europe our concerns about China's aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific. Because in the past, Europe has tended to take a somewhat benign view of China, not taken a lot of interest in this area. In fact, at one stage, they were almost concluding an investment and agreement with China, which has, of course, now been put on hold. And Europe now is looking more at the Indo-Pacific. So I hope that we are able to sensitize Europe and Germany, France, the Nordic countries, to our concerns about the rule of law in the Indo-Pacific region.
Ambassador Shankar, in fact, you rightly mentioned about how important energy security has become in today's geopolitical scenario. The entire question of energy security has always been part of India's discussions through almost all leading paths globally. But in the current context, the energy security has become actually part of discussions relating to national security. So during her visit to India recently, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Russia's war in Ukraine is a stark reminder that our dependency on Russian fossil fuels is not going to be sustainable. So how do you see, in fact, discussions between India and Germany in ensuring clean energy for both the countries? At a time, in fact, we have seen, divergent views about sourcing energy supplies from Russia. So do you think any direct talks between India and Germany during Prime Minister's visit to Berlin on further boosting energy cooperation between India and Germany?
Look, Germany already provides us $1 billion a year for cooperation in green energy. So that's already a major part of the agenda between India and Germany. The situations with regard to dependence on Russia for energy are very different. There's no parallel because Germany, for instance, depends on Russia for most of its gas supplies, for most of its oil supplies, and it's a very different position. For India, I think less than 2%, 1 to 2% of our total energy supplies come from Russia. So our dependence on Russia for energy is much less. Europe is now talking of stopping oil supplies from Russia by the end of this year. But on the gas, they have been unable to think of alternatives, and it's not easy also. So the gas dependency on Russia will continue, which is why they will accelerate the transition to renewable energies, also as a means of reducing their dependence on Russia. And in the meanwhile, they will look at, buying gas from other countries and bringing them to their ports and then transporting. But with Russia, they have pipelines actually, which bring the gas. So it's not going to be easy for Europe to reduce its dependence on Russia. For gas, it's going to take time. For India, there's been criticism that we have bought Russian oil, which was discounted. But given the prices of energy and given that our overall purchases from Russia are so little, it really is immaterial what we have bought from Russia. And I think also we don't have the kind of deep pockets that Europe and the US have. And when you have high energy prices like today, it impacts our entire economic planning and the whole economy feels the impact. So it's a very difficult situation for India. It's a very difficult situation for many other developing countries who are facing shortages of both food grains, of cooking oil, of energy. So all commodities have been impacted because Russia and Ukraine used to supply such a lot of food grains, of edible oil, particularly sunflower oil, of other commodities, for instance, which go into the making of chips for computers, and that will also be affected. So there's a, very wide ripple effect worldwide of the Ukraine crisis. And from India's point of view, an early resolution, stopping of fighting, commencement of negotiations, and an early resolution would be the best for the world and for the two countries concerned.
Ambassador Shankar, in his pre-departure statement, actually, Prime Minister Modi said the long-standing commercial ties between India and Germany form the pillars of our strategic partnership. The Indo-German Intergovernmental Consultation Mechanism is meeting very shortly to be headed by Prime Minister Modi and the German Chancellor. And it's a very unique mechanism that brings together several ministers and officials from both the sides to engage in bilateral discussions culminating in a plenary session. So what kind of concrete outcomes from the Intergovernmental Consultation Mechanism as well as meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Chancellor Ola?
Well, I think that there will be a decision to step up cooperation in green technologies, in renewable energy, that there will be a decision to accelerate negotiations on the India-EU free trade agreement, that there may be other areas such as educational and scientific cooperation, which have also been part of the agenda of the two countries. In France, when Prime Minister goes, obviously President Macron has just been re-elected. He's going to touch base with an old friend and with a country with which India has had a strong strategic partnership in defense, in the nuclear space realm. So France has been an important partner for India. And of course, they've been the most active European power in the Indo-Pacific region, sharing many of India's approaches and concerns. So that will be important. And of course, in Denmark, he has a summit with all the Nordic countries. So all in all, I think it's going to be an important trip.
Ambassador Shankar, thank you so very much for your detailed perspective about India's ties with Germany and expectations from Prime Minister Modi's visit to Berlin. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Prime Minister's visit to Germany and its significance. The participants were Meera Shankar, former diplomat, and Manas Pratim Bhuyan, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.